Hello. Hopefully you guys have all been successful with Unit 1. We are now going to kind of go through the history of life on our planet. So we're going to start with, in this section, we're going to talk about the Archean and the Proterozoic eons. And so we're going to kind of break that up into early Earth, early life on Earth, and then the Ediacaran period. So when we look at the early part of Earth, okay, we're talking the oldest rocks have been dated at 4.5 million years ago. We have our first fossils of prokaryotic cells in the Archean period, 3.7 approximately periods million years ago. And so, as we suspect, prokaryotic cells were the first cells um, that developed into life. And then we're going to go to this guy and we're going to talk about these guys. These are called stromatolites. And then we're going to get into where we're talking about organelles. So this is very much what our planet is, presumed to have looked like in the Archean eon. And you can see when when we talk about the word archaic, that means old. So hence the Archean eon. And then when we talk about our Archean bacteria, meaning that we believe that that type of bacteria came first. All right. So we can see our first oceans, and we're going to talk about DNA and tectonic activity. That's where the plates are moving on our planet, giving us volcanoes and earthquakes. Some of the first continents, and then prokaryotic cells. And then we're going to get some oxygen, what's called the Great Oxygenation Event. So first, when we look, at the beginning, I always like to start at the beginning. We can talk about the Big Bang. And so it is believed that all the matter in the universe was contained in a very, very, very small, almost pinpoint, and something unbalanced that, and it exploded. And when it exploded, matter and energy have been emanating and moving away ever since. So we can see our Big Bang. We are spreading out over time. We are moving further and further apart. Lots of physics support for that. But we know that our solar system was a very, very hostile place for billions of years. And it is actually hypothesized that there were about 100 planetesimals in our solar system until everything kind of, they collided and, came together or fell apart into the planets that we have today. So there is a video I would highly recommend called The Making of the Planet. The first 31 minutes has to do with this concept. So I would definitely take time to watch that show. It is very interesting to see this. So for millions of years, the Earth was covered in water, which contained the materials that is needed for life. In fact, if we're looking for life outside of our planet, we generally look for water because as we know, at least as far as we know at this point in time, water is necessary for life. We know volcanoes are very active and producing gases that supplied our atmosphere. And then we had uplifting, which has to do with that plate tectonic, which pushed the land that was submerged underwater up. So we started to get land above water. Now, as that water's out there and, you could say it simmered, it's out there and simmered for millions of years. We see these volcanoes are outgassing, putting out, of course, steam, which then condenses and then we get precipitation, carbon dioxide, we get some of the helium and the hydrogen, and most importantly, well, not most importantly, but very important is the nitrogen up in the atmosphere. And as we have this basically kind of like this water cycle happening, some of those molecules would be dissolved in water. And it is believed that this is where the first chemical reactions took place that would give us some of the molecules that we need in order for life. It was Urey and Miller that came up with this idea. They wanted to try to model it. So they set up this experiment and, they boiled the water, the heat you would get from like the volcanoes. There's our water vapor. And then we have spark because around volcanoes, that high energy and stuff gives you lightning. Plus, we just have lightning anyways with storms. It would cool. And inside this gas chamber was also the same molecules they felt would be present in our atmosphere at the time. And then the condenser just cools it down from a gas to a liquid so that we get a liquid down here. And they thought this would take, because this is like a closed system, so it can keep going around. They thought this would take many years. Matter of fact, they didn't even know if they'd see something during their lifetime to see some of the macromolecules that we need for life. And pretty much right away, they started seeing the molecules that were necessary for life. There are 4 basic biological molecules. They're often called biological macromolecules. I'm going to talk about here. We're going to talk about carbohydrates. That's your sugars, lipids, which are also fats, proteins, and nucleic acid. So carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are sugars. We use our sugars for a lot of different things. We have our simple sugars here, which are very sweet, and those are generally used for energy. So we use those when we in order to do cellular respiration, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We have disaccharides, which are 2 sugar molecules. This one right here is table sugar. Lactose, we hear about that in milk, dairy products. And then when we have oligosaccharides or polysaccharides, those are much more bigger chains of these sugars. And so starch is how plants store their sugar, and cellulose is a type of cell wall that plants use. So we have different uses. Like I said, the main uses used for carbohydrates is energy, but plants also are going to use a type of polysaccharide called cellulose for their cell walls. Arthropods, which is also like insects, will also use a special kind of sugar to form their exoskeleton called chitin. Right now with the cicadas, you've seen all those empty shells on your trees and bushes. That is made up of chitin. Lipids. Lipids are used for several different things. They're used for energy. They actually contain more energy per gram than sugar. We are also going to use those for our cell membrane, and we also use them for cell signaling. So there's a couple different things that we use lipids for. I'm sure you've heard of like steroids and stuff like that. That's a type of lipid. Proteins. There are so many different uses for proteins. So when we talk about proteins, proteins are made up of amino acids. And there are 20 different amino acids. And so we can put those together in many different ways and make different structures. We can make some proteins that are called enzymes that speed up the rate of a chemical reaction. We also have some that are ID tags, their identification on the surface of your cells, so your body knows that you are you. Immune system, antibodies, those are proteins. A lot of chemical messengers. There are so many different types of proteins and jobs, so they have all kinds of different purposes. What this picture here is showing you is that we have these amino acids and how they are put together. And when they are put together in a particular order, they can form a couple different shapes. They can form this little, you see this alpha helix. We also have another structure called a beta pleated sheet, which you're seeing kind of in here. But the tertiary is where it all folds up together. Okay, so there are different components to proteins. There's more detail here, but we're not going to get bogged down in that. The last biological macromolecule would be nucleic acids. And so with nucleic acids, there are 2. There is RNA and DNA. They both contain the instructions on how to put those amino acids together to make a specific protein. We have DNA and RNA are made up of a sugar. And we can see here the sugar is either ribose or it is deoxyribose. And then the nucleic would have to do with these right here, which is the nitrogen. Do a different color. These are the nitrogen bases. CGAU, cytosine, guanine, adenine, and uracil. DNA is a little different. Right here, they have the same except for right there. RNA uses uracil and DNA uses thymine. RNA is single-stranded and DNA is double-stranded and forms that very, very famous, right, double helix here that we see here. All right. There used to be a very big argument between scientists as to which came first, DNA or RNA, and being particularly fond of DNA, that's kind of what my research was DNA sequencing. You know, it had to be the DNA. And more and more proved it was most likely RNA, because not only can RNA store information, but it can also act as an enzyme and speed up the rate of chemical reactions. So it is most likely that RNA was developed before DNA. Now, I would highly suggest, I've got some, like I said, some more videos for you to watch. There is an Amoeba Sister video on biological macromolecules that'll help you understand them a little bit better. And here, right here is just my summary page. And so you can see here, we have our proteins, which are made up of amino acids. In fact, remember, there's 20 different amino acids. We have our lipids, okay, which are, again, basically fats. And then we have our sugars, our carbohydrates, and we also have our nitrogen, our new bases with our nucleic acids. You see that nitrogen base here, okay? So that's just kind of a rundown of the basic 4 molecules that are used in living organisms, right? Okay, so that is the end of this first part. So again, remember to do your reading assignment, watch your video, and hopefully everything is going well.